Hi, and welcome back for part two of our series on setting e-commerce business goals from a micro and macro level standpoint. We hope you enjoyed part one, and we're excited to kind of dive into the macro side of things now with part two. Again, the presentation that we're going over on this video and that we went over in the previous one is linked below in the description. We highly suggest you download that and kind of follow along, especially to take advantage of the additional templates that are linked there. Which my team I use to do this. So without further ado, let's jump straight into part two. All right, so step one of part two is going to be creating a financial planning sheet. So this is kind of the first template that we've included here for you, and that you can kind of utilize with your own numbers as we go through this together. Even more so than part one, I think it's going to be beneficial for you to kind of follow along, especially if you took the time to create those metrics and kind of organize everything that we did together in the first video. So again, step one is just going to be creating a financial template. And what this is going to do is kind of take everything that we're working on and put it into a real, visual action plan of what your financial goals and kind of scaling process is going to look like. So let's kind of take a look at the template together, actually. So this first tab, we kind of have just a basic empty template. And as we go through these steps, I have actually taken the time to complete those in the template so you can see how it evolves and we get to that final step together. Again, would be super beneficial for you to kind of follow along and do this with your actual business numbers together. So we have a few things here on the template. You can see that it's broken out into a few sections. This top section is going to be our variable advertising costs. This second section is where we're going to essentially take those ad costs, compare them to what our marketing efficiency rating might be, and see how that translates to overall store revenue, which then translates to total gross revenue after taking our out the door expenses from there. Next section is where you're going to list all of your fixed expenses, and then at the end of the day, what we're looking to do is find that total monthly profit number with all of that and take it into consideration. So jumping back over to our presentation here, going to step two. So step two is actually kind of starting to implement some of the numbers into this financial planning sheet. So one, what you're going to do is just kind of make a list of all your monthly expenses that are not included in the variable product or marketing expenses. So again, in that, phase one, what we did is we're looking at variable expenses that go into every product that leaves the facility or that gets shipped out to a customer. What we're looking at now are the expenses that exist, whether you're doing 0 orders or 100 orders. So those are going to be things like your storage, your employees, any agency costs that you may have, any rent, any softwares, things like that. And once you've kind of outlined all of that, what you're going to do is you're going to take them and you're going to plug them into this third section of the sheet. So again, that's where we kind of have, example 2 here in the template. You can see what we've done is we've plugged in some arbitrary, just fixed expenses here for the sake of the example. So going into step 3, you're going to start to establish some of your starting marketing budgets. Now, you can look at this a couple of different ways. Obviously, for existing brands, the easiest thing to do is just kind of start by plugging in what you've been spending recently. So what have you spent each month over the last couple of months? Use that as your starting point. For new brands, we generally suggest starting with at least $100 per day per paid ads channel, but this is obviously up to your discretion and the resources that you may have. If you have a marketing agency or a consultant or something like that, this is where you kind of work with them to determine, okay, what channels are best for our brands, what should we spend on those channels. And once you have those numbers, again, you're going to move into this financial sheet, and we'll kind of show the example of the evolution of that. So example step 3, you can see what we've done now is we've added in our Facebook ads budget, our Google ads budget, and our influencers budget to give us our total variable advertising costs. Now jumping back over to presentation. Step 4 is going to be determining your MER goals. So this is where you kind of have to start to play around with the sheet to get an understanding of what your MER should be. MER is essentially like your ROAS for the entire business as a whole. So everything that you're spending on marketing, everything that you're making as a store in terms of revenue, just divided by everything that you're spending on marketing. And that is going to be used to basically calculate your net profit. So your net profit calculation is going to come down to total marketing budget times your marketing efficiency rating times average product margin divided by, minus total marketing spend minus total fixed expenses. So everything that you're spending on marketing times the rate at which that's returning to you. So let's say you're spending $100 a month on marketing, you're getting an MER of 2, that's 200 times your average product margin. Let's say it's 50%. So now you have 100 minus your total marketing spend of $100 minus your total expenses. You can see that you're obviously going to be way in the red in that situation. But just to kind of give you an example of how that formula works. So what you're going to do is you're going to jump back into the sheet, and this is where you're just going to kind of start to play around with numbers. Again, starting with your marketing spend and kind of seeing, okay, at what marketing efficiency rating does that profitability start to overcome those fixed expenses that I've also added? So let's jump back over to the sheet and kind of visualize this together. All right, so we have everything plugged in here. We have all of our marketing expenses. We have all of our fixed expenses. And with our out the door costs, we've basically put the inverse of what our average profit margin is. So I believe we determined the average profit margin to be 55%, meaning the average out the door cost would be the remaining 45% of that. So this is where you'll kind of plug in, that average product or profit margin that we determined in phase 1. If your average profit margin is 70%, this formula you will just adjust to be 0.7 right here instead. So let's move forward with this example of average out the door cost of 45%. Looking at our current ad budget, if we were to get an MER of a 3.8, that would put us at about $34,575 of total gross revenue, which is going to, after all fixed expenses, only leave us with about $1,700 in brand profit. So if that's, if you're looking to profit more than that, for example, if you plug in these numbers, and again, when it comes to like a starting MER, something that's going to be realistic is anywhere from the range of like a 3 to a 4. Remember that MER also includes any sales, any revenue that's coming in from your email, from organic channels, from social media, things that aren't connected to an ad spend either. So usually that MER is going to be higher than, for example, what the ROAS you're seeing in your ads are, because it obviously has those other sources of revenue. So a realistic MER that you can go for is going to be somewhere in the range of a 3 to a 4, or maybe even up closer to a 5. So if you're looking at this sheet and you see that, okay, well, for me to be profitable, I would have to be getting an MER of a 6. And that that's not necessarily realistic, right? If I'm, creating an e-commerce marketing strategy around a brand under the idea that I have to get an MER of a 6, you're probably going to constantly be in a tough situation where you're not able to achieve. So if that's kind of the situation you run into where, it looks like your business only works with an unrealistic MER, then what you need to look at are attacking it from a few different other angles. If I know instead that what I can actually achieve is an MER of a 4, and, let's say that these fixed expenses were a lot higher. Let's say that, our rent is, make this 20,000 for the example. So let's say our fixed expenses were a lot higher, and we see that, okay, at a realistic MER of a 4, we're going to be losing $10,000 a month. So how can we attack that? How can we come at this from a couple of different angles that are going to fix this problem and make this business profitable? One angle is obviously going to be lowering your fixed expenses, right? If nothing else changes, you continue to spend the same amount, you continue to get the same MER, but you lower your fixed expenses, that can put you to a point where your business is now profitable. But that's not always possible, right? You can't just eliminate all of your fixed expenses. There are obviously things that you need, or they probably wouldn't be in place. So the other angle to look at it is, okay, well, if we know that we can achieve an MER of a 4, and we know that that's not necessarily making us profitable at our current ad budget, what if we improve our ad budget while still maintaining that current MER of a 4? What if instead of spending $10,000 and $5,000 on Facebook and Google, we were spending $20,000 and $10,000? So that's a lot more realistic way of getting to profitability, right? Again, you may be looking at that initial situation saying, oh, wow, well, with my marketing budget, I have to get a 6 to 1 or I'm not going to be making money. Your marketing team might come back to you and say, hey, look, I'm sorry, like a 6 to 1 is not going to be realistic. But what is realistic is, hey, look, we've always been able to achieve a 4 to 1. I think if we continue to scale aggressively on our ad accounts, implement some more creative testing, implement some more audience testing, use some cost cap bid strategies and things like that, I think we can scale that budget a lot easier out of 4 to 1 than we can get a 6 to 1 out of the current budget. So it's kind of finding a happy medium with, your colleagues, your marketing teams and things like that to be able to accomplish a common goal. Again, there's multiple ways to skin the cat, and one way might be more realistic or easier to do than the other. So that's kind of where this situation comes in, where it's kind of just playing around with the numbers. Again, start by putting in your starting marketing budget, put in a realistic MER, start with like a baseline of a 3, and put in all of your fixed expenses and see where that leaves you. Okay, with my current marketing budget and an average MER of a 3 and my fixed expenses, I'm losing money, and start to work through those next questions. Okay, well, can I reduce my fixed expenses? No, I can't. Is it realistic that I can improve my MER? Yeah, I can probably improve it to a 3.5 before we start to kind of hit a ceiling. Okay, that helped out a little bit, but we're still not profitable. Let me talk to the ads team and see if they're confident scaling budget while maintaining that 3. Okay, we talk to them, they say, I think we can add another 5,000 to Facebook. Boom, you've hit your profitability now. So that's kind of how it all ties together, right? In phase 1, what we did was we were ultimately looking to see what our ROAS goals should be for being able to scale that ad account, being able to identify winners, determining where we should put more budget, where we should reduce budget. Now that we have an understanding of how we can do that, again, we start to look at, okay, how does that tie in when we start to consider fixed expenses? If, the ROAS target that we set gives us 20% profitability on a per unit basis, and our fixed expenses are $10,000, how do we get to $100,000 in sales so that $20,000 in profitability overcomes those fixed expenses? So I hope that wasn't too complicated, and hopefully you kind of understand how to apply these concepts to your brand and be able to kind of come up with a more sound understanding of where your targets should be and what kind of levels of profitability those can generate. But ultimately, if you ever need help kind of working through these things, our team would love to hop on a call and kind of have this discussion with you, and we can kind of go through your numbers and help you figure that out. The next evolution of this, after you've kind of went through this exercise and gotten a good idea of what your MER targets should be and all that kind of good stuff, then you can kind of start to map out a 12-month roadmap. So let's say that you went through the practice, you filled out the entire template that we just went over, and you've kind of determined, okay, well, at our current budget and our current MER, we're not where we want to be. And you've determined that to get to where you want to be, you need an MER of 3.5 and you need to increase budget by $10,000. The 12-month roadmap is essentially mapping out the progress of getting to that point. Okay, month 2, we want to try to scale our ad budget by $1,000. Month 3, this much, etc. Just kind of, again, aligning with your teams, with, maybe you have internal media buyers, maybe you're working with an agency, to just make sure that everyone is on the same page about what the evolution of this looks like. And again, maybe we're not where we want to be, but we know where we want to be, and now we're in agreement of how long it's going to take to get there. And what those steps are going to be. So in conclusion, again, we hope that this was helpful for brand owners and marketers to just kind of take something that traditionally I feel like has been very ambiguous and maybe overly complicated and can kind of create some thought paralysis, and make it something that's a little bit more black and white and actually has clear steps to be able to get to an answer and create an action plan. Remember to kind of always constantly refer back to your micro level goals when you're assessing the feasibility of your macro level goals. So for example, if you've determined you need a certain MER, is the ROAS goal that you've set for your Facebook ads team or your Google ads team conducive to achieving that MER? Or does it need to be adjusted based on the way things are actually playing out in real time? It's also important to remember that there's a lot of factors aside from just paid traffic that go into improving MER. Improvements in conversion rate, improvements in average order value and retention and things like that are all going to improve your MER without having to change something directly in the ad account itself. So that's a concept that we're going to kind of get into in future videos. It's something that we call the 4 lever strategy, which is basically, the 4 different categories that you can kind of pull on to affect the growth of an e-commerce store. Those being traffic, conversion rate, average order value, and purchase frequency, and the different tools and strategies and things that kind of fall into each of those categories and allow you to manipulate them. So again, thank you for joining along. We hope you've extracted some value from this. Again, I know that this is a topic that is very technical, mathematical, and confusing, and we would love to hop on and help you through this. So if at any point you'd like to have that one-on-one conversation with myself or one of my partners, please visit sflecommerce.com and book a free consultation with us, and we would love to kind of walk through this with you. With that being said, have a great day, and thanks for stopping by again.